Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Campfire Storytelling Podcast. For all things Halloween, this is hauntformer, or you can just call me Mac. That's cool too. And tonight, in honor of me just having watched Scream 6, currently in theaters, I'm going to talk about not Scream 6. Don't worry. I'll get to Scream 6 in a bit. In fact, I have at least a podcast and a review planned about the film, because I have a lot to say about Scream 6 and the up-and-coming Scream 7, which has been greenlit, so get comfy for that. I have seen 7 horror films, well, quote-unquote horror films this year. And I really wanted to talk about all of them. Now, I did already previously make reviews for Megan and Skinamarink, but there were 4 in between those 2 films and the up-and-coming review on Scream 6, which will be its own review, that I saw and I wanted to talk about. And I feel like it wasn't fair to just skip them and move on to Scream 6, because I wanted to talk about each of these movies, even though I did not get to cover each of them exclusively as their own review. So bear with me on that. Now, if there is one that you really want to see a full-length review on, you can leave that suggestion down in the comments, but I will try to sum up all of my thoughts on each of these films in this podcast, and there will be timestamps so you can skip ahead to any of the films to hear me talk about them. One of these films was perhaps my favorite film of the year thus far, and one of the films is my least favorite film that I've seen in 2023. Now, to be fair, it is only March. We're only a fourth of the way done with 2023. Man, isn't that crazy how fast time flies? But I have to say, I'm overall pretty confident in what's remaining in 2023, and I'm pretty satisfied with what we've gotten so far. I'll just say that. The 4 films that I'm going to be talking about tonight are Missing, Infinity Pool, Knock at the Cabin, and Cocaine Bear. So those are the 4 films that will be in this podcast. Again, Megan and Skinamarink were already previous films that I already talked about on the channel with their own individual reviews, and Scream 6 will be coming soon. You bear with me? Bear with me? That's a Cocaine Bear pun. We're going to jump into it. Now, I am going to stick with that order that I mentioned. That was the order I saw these films in. First Missing, then Infinity Pool, then Knock at the Cabin, and finally Cocaine Bear. And then I saw Scream 6. So, let's begin with Missing, which came out toward the end of January. That and Infinity Pool came out towards the end of January. Knock at the Cabin came out in February, and Cocaine Bear early March. Missing is a follow-up film to Searching, which came out in 2018. I did make a full review on that on my channel, though it is a dated video, so keep that in mind. My quality has definitely improved since the late 2010s, but I still believe that review holds my current position on the film. I really enjoyed Searching. I need to, again, reiterate, if you didn't know, I am a major advocate and a major fan of found footage style horror, whether that be kind of this analog internet type thing, whether it be something shot on a camcorder like the Blair Witch Project or Cloverfield, whatever the case may be, whether it's a mockumentary like, say, the Bukowski tapes, whatever the case is, I just really love that style of horror. It's one of my favorite subgenres. So, Searching was a film that was on my radar, as was Missing, because of the very nature of the film style. In addition, I just like the subject matter of people going missing and others trying to track them down. Kind of creates this horror mystery thriller type vibe that I'm really into. And I can confidently say that I really loved Missing. I would have said it's my favorite film of the year, but there was one that surpassed it. But I will say it was a really solid movie. And it was kind of slept on by the majority of people. A lot of people did not talk about this movie, and I'm really sad that I didn't get to make a full review on it. I was planning to, but just time and schedules got the better of me, but I'm very glad to be talking about it now. It is directed by Nicholas D. Johnson and Will Merrick, and it was produced by Stage 6 Films, Screen Gems, Basilev's Company, and Search Party, which I'm pretty sure is the same studio behind Searching. And I want to make sure I know this lead actress because she was really phenomenal. Storm Reed. And apparently she's in Euphoria, which I don't watch and I don't plan to, but I think she did a fantastic job. Ken Lung, you know his face. You may not know his name, but terrific actor. He's also in this film, does a great job. Really, the cast was solid in this movie. Because when it comes to these found footage style horror movies, the performances of all of the characters, but especially the leads, are extremely important in getting across the realism of the movies. Missing follows a young girl whose mother goes, well, hence the title, missing, and she, using the internet and her clever millennial skills, is able to search for her missing mom, who went on vacation with her new boyfriend, and it creates this whole stir. There are twists and turns, lots of twists and turns. I thought it was a really clever, very sharp screenplay. I thought the way that it's edited was fantastic. Not only is it this found footage kind of laptop-style horror movie, but it focuses on important elements that you're seeing within the frame of that laptop screen to emphasize certain bits of information or to draw attention to something or away from something else. It's very playful with the audience, and it's something that I really love to see. These type of movies are always going to be something that I'll gravitate to just because of their uniqueness and cleverness. But Missing was a fantastic movie. I hope that there are more films in this Searching, Missing, laptop unfriended style horror series because I will be there for them. I think the film maybe was better than Searching. I haven't watched that in a while. And while I did love Unfriended Dark Web, I'd say that Missing was definitely one of the best of this style of film. It was really fantastic. Again, not a lot of people talked about Missing, and I really hope you can give it the attention it deserves. I'm not jumping into major plot points and beats because this is a mystery film, and I really want you to enjoy that mystery. I went into this movie almost completely blind, and it worked to the benefit of the film, so go check it out. This is a great movie, too, because if you don't see it in theaters, I don't think that's a huge detriment, because it's recorded on a screen. So if you watch it at home, it's not the end of the world. It's not this, like, cinematic masterpiece where you need to see it in theaters, like Nope or something, or even any of these other movies like Infinity Pool. This is one where you could watch it at home and get basically the same effect. This is a story-driven film, a mystery-driven movie, and I highly recommend it. Up next, we have Infinity Pool, which again came out in late January. It is directed by Brandon Cronenberg, the son of David Cronenberg, who directed a lot of body horror from the 1980s. The main one that comes to mind for me is, of course, The Fly, which is one of my all-time favorite science fiction horrors. And his previous work, Possessor, I did do a review of. I enjoyed Possessor enough, but I felt like it was a little drab. It was a little bleak. And it's okay for a horror film to be bleak, but that does mean that it's not as rewatchable as some other movies that I watch for entertainment purposes. Possessor was a really sharp and clever idea, and a pretty good execution of it. It is a little abstract and out there, a little artsy-fartsy if you want to call it that, but that is the nature of the Cronenberg name, and I don't think it's pushed too far where the story can't be enjoyed. But Possessor was good, and I think Infinity Pool was even a step above it, because it fixed that one crucial element that was missing from Possessor, and that's the fun element. I found that Infinity Pool with its cast, especially Mia Goth, but really all around, was more captivating to watch. It is a bleak story, but it manages to get that across in a more interesting and fun way. Infinity Pool follows a couple that goes out of their home country, presumably America, to this foreign country, and they get in a bad accident. I'll tread lightly with the spoilers. They get in this accident, and they're basically convicted of this crime, which is punishable by death. And there's actually this kind of clause for this government, a tourist clause, where they create clones of these tourist individuals and kill them, give those clones the death penalty so these people can walk free. And it kind of creates this opposite effect of a guilt complex where really these characters begin to feel like they can do whatever they want with no ramifications. It creates this very elitist group of characters that just kind of say screw you to the government, screw you to other people, and do whatever they want. And not only is the film a great body horror film, a very uncanny, creepy film when it comes to the clones, but it also has a lot to say in terms of kind of power dynamics. Once the power from a system goes to someone's head or to a group of people's head, who knows how far they will exploit it. And I thought the film did a really great job at balancing those elements while also keeping it really, really fun. It's a great concept. It's a fantastic what-if situation that lends itself well to the horror genre. It also is quite sci-fi, and if you're a fan of grounded science fiction as I am, what I mean by grounded science fiction is it's not in space, it's not like Star Wars or some kind of fantastical thing. It's set here on Earth, it's very serious and straightforward and feels like it could happen, but it's very fantastical. Cloning movies have always had that effect, especially for me. But it serves its purpose really well. I thought it was really well edited. There are a few sequences that get a little redundant in terms of the tripping out type of imagery, like, oh, look, here's a bunch of random flashes of color and light. One of them, the scene where the clones actually get created, I felt like worked well for the narrative, but there's a second one in somewhat of a sexy scene that I feel like really wasn't needed. It has to do with characters doing drugs, and I get they're trying to show the effect of what those drugs are doing to the characters, but it was a little long-winded for my particular taste, but it didn't take me out of the movie. It continued to keep me intrigued throughout. It is pretty graphic, but I also think that graphic nature is necessary to get across what these characters were going through. Particularly Alexander Skarsgård, who plays the main character. I thought his bewilderment throughout the movie was really fascinating to watch. Borderline funny, but nevertheless really well done. Check out Infinity Pool if you haven't. It is more serious than Missing. I mean, Missing's still a great movie and does take itself seriously, but it is a little more, I don't know what you'd say, higher stakes maybe? A little more grounded, a little more somber. But both of those films I can praise. My next film that I'm going to be talking about, again going along with praises, this one most notably, is Knock at the Cabin. M. Night Shyamalan's newest film, which when I was mentioning my favorite and least favorite films from this year so far, Knock at the Cabin is my favorite film of the year thus far. M. Night is an interesting guy, alright? I think most people are aware of this, and he's created a repertoire of interesting movies. I have some extremely hot takes when it comes to some of M. Night's movies, and perhaps my biggest one is that I absolutely loved Old. I know most people hate it to death, and I've gotten in many heated debates when it comes to Old. Old is my favorite film of 2021, the year that it came out, and I have nonstop praised it ever since. I understand that it's a weird movie, that the dialogue of the movie is very strange, but M. Night always has this kind of uncanny writing strategy. But sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, so maybe that's the case there. But Old was just very effective for me. I loved the characters, and I thought the story was really intriguing. It was high concept, and it was based off of a comic book. Knock at the Cabin, similarly, is based off a book, not a comic, but an actual novel. And I really think that this story is captivating. Of course, it's not fully M. Night's idea, but I do think the screenplay is really solid, and this is definitely one of his best movies in terms of how it's presented. And I also think it's a great crowd-pleasing movie, whereas Old was kind of weird and abstract. This is a great crowd-pleasing film. And one of the reasons for that are, first and foremost, the family at the center of the film. I thought were very likable and very relatable. But secondly, Dave Bautista. Him and the rest of the, I guess you would call them cultists maybe, or the religious people. But Dave Bautista specifically. In the world of those pro-wrestler type of actors, like John Cena or Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Dave Bautista is by far the best, because he adapts to each of the roles that he plays, whereas those other two guys more or less play the same character. Now, John Cena's kind of caught on to this and made himself somewhat of a meme, but The Rock is continuing to try to be serious as an actor, and to me, he's always just The Rock. But Dave Bautista managed to play Leonard in this film surprisingly well, and it was very effective. And one of the reasons for that is that the cultists in this movie are not malicious, evil type of traditional horror characters where you would think of like, oh, these people want to hurt people. They don't. They are like randomly selected people, and their apprehension to do these violent things makes what they think is true seem all the more real. And I really loved that high concept premise of having to sacrifice one to save the entire world. And as the film goes along, your opinions about both the family's actions and the cultists' actions change. Again, I don't want to spoil anything, but Knock at the Cabin was really well done. It was such a small-scale story, too, and I absolutely love those. And how it plays out really worked for me. I dug this movie, and I think it will continue to reign as one of my favorites, if not my favorite film for 2023. Please check out Knock at the Cabin. Again, it is this very apocalyptic, end-of-the-world film, and even though those sound grand and huge and big, and to some extent the film is in terms of its scope, it is a small-scale, character-driven story, and I think M. Night shines when it comes to those types of narratives. Now I go from my favorite film of the year to perhaps my least favorite film, a movie that I was anticipating, but sorely let me down. Cocaine Bear. Alright, I'm going to talk about Cocaine Bear because it's a bear who did cocaine, and I had high hopes for this movie. Yes, it sounds like a sci-fi original type of premise, and really the resulting movie basically is. The film is directed by Elizabeth Banks and was distributed by Universal Studios on a budget, crazily enough, of $30 to $35 million. I don't know how it cost that much money, but it did. Now, I should be fair, this is not fully a horror movie, it's more of a horror comedy, or a thriller comedy. But you know what? I really like those types of movies. I love horror comedies. It's one of my favorite subgenres of the horror genre. But this film just didn't work. It was not very suspenseful. It was not very funny. It just kind of happened, and the movie ended. There was nothing clever about it. There wasn't any particular sequence that stuck out as interesting, maybe aside from a very brief scene involving an ambulance chase, which I think was a fan favorite for this movie. But I've heard a lot of praise about Cocaine Bear, and in my humble opinion, I don't think it's warranted. The script is not very clever. Things just kind of happen, and characters kind of yell and say, "Oh shoot, the bear's on cocaine, isn't that funny?" And it is, for the first 5 minutes, But once the punchline of Cocaine Bear, a bear that did cocaine, sets in, there are no additional laughs to be found in the movie. The characters are kind of one note, aside from one particular character played by O'Shea Jackson Jr., or O'Shea Jackson Jr., something. He plays kind of this, like, thug guy who's trying to get back the cocaine for his boss, and I thought his character was interesting to watch because he had somewhat of a personality. But all the rest of these characters, even ones performed by great actors, like Jesse Tyler Ferguson, Kerry Russell, and even the late, great Ray Liotta, and I was really sad that this was his final film. But all of these other characters just felt like phoning it in type of performances. Not that I can blame them for a movie called Cocaine Bear, but I don't know, it didn't work for me. And I'm a big fan of those ridiculous type of stupid horror movies, but I feel like when they're trying to be too funny, it doesn't work. I had the same type of feeling when I watched that movie, The Meg. Remember the one about the big shark? Same basic vibe from it. Wasn't funny enough, wasn't thrilling enough, it was just a bare-bones, stupid movie that belongs on the Sci-Fi Channel. Those are kind of my thoughts on Cocaine Bear, and I think if this was a smaller scale, like little indie movie, I'd be a little more forgiving. But this is a $35 million Universal picture. I expect a little bit higher class than something you could watch free on Tubi, which I think is where this belongs, unfortunately. Well, there you have it. My thoughts on Cocaine Bear, Knock at the Cabin, Infinity Pool, and Missing. I could go into greater detail about each of these movies, but I think the thoughts that I talked about in this podcast gave a good overview of each of these. And I'm excited to talk about more horror films as the year goes along. If there are these kind of lesser horror films, like not the big tier movies like Scream or Megan or The Exorcist are, I might put them in this type of podcast format so I can crank more of these reviews out in one sitting than having to record 4 different videos or X different videos when I get to them. I do want to talk about some additional movies coming up soon, including Scream 6, but also some other movies that I failed to talk about from last year, and movies that are coming up and what I think and hope for them. So if you have any suggestions for any of that, let me know in the comments. Thank you for listening, and thank you for subscribing and watching and liking. I appreciate each and every one of you. And remember, for all things Halloween, this is Hauntformer.